Hi, I'm Jennifer with Hopeful Homemaker, and welcome to the final episode of a series of videos on how to do applique. Today, we are going to be layering some pieces, including adding a stem and creating a full flower from several different pieces and using different methods. We'll use the bias tape that we made earlier, as well as other shapes. The specific shapes I'm using in this project come from my Soda Pop Blossom quilt pattern. You can find a link to that pattern in the comments below if you're interested in making it, as well as links to the other videos in this series. So glad you're here. Welcome back. This time I'm going to be stitching down my thread basted shape that has convex curves. And instead of using a black or contrasting thread, I'm going to use a matching thread. It's a pale blue. It's going to match my blue fabric. And because of the background I'm sewing it to, it's going to be basically invisible wherever it is. But what I'm matching to is that. Now remember, I'm going to keep the end of my shape open to add a stem, but I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, coming up as I go through. The difference here is just that I have different curves. And as I go through my convex shapes, especially, which is where I did my little snips about 1/4 of an inch apart, I'm going to make sure that I do a nice even stitch. This is obviously sped up. I wish that applique was actually this quick. You can see that I'm continually readjusting where I'm holding my fabric with my right hand while I stitch with my left hand, and I'm folding under just a few stitches ahead of where I'm sewing. And I'm going to continue doing this, just trying to make sure that as I fold it under, I'm keeping a really gentle and consistent curve going around so that it doesn't appear that there are any sharp edges on my flower when I'm finished. So as I go around curves, sometimes the stitches need to be a little closer together to make everything stay where we need it to stay. But I'm going to continue my stitching and go around this curve and just keep going. And as I do that, I'm going to continue to rotate my large fabric. Sometimes when we applique, we are appliquing things to pieces of fabric that are much bigger than the shape that we're actually appliquing. And so you're going to have to do some shifting and some rotating of your base fabric in order to have a good grip. So I'm continually doing that and adjusting my grip so that I can hold my fabric in a way that is most comfortable, and especially so that I can guide it and be consistent in my seam allowance as I turn it under. So I'm turning this under with both my hands and also with my needle. And again, my needle is going down, straight down into my background fabric, almost underneath my applique shape, and then coming up. Occasionally, I get lazy and don't realize, and I pull my needle right off my thread. When I do that, I just snip it if I need to have a fresh end on my thread, and then I rethread the needle and keep going. You can see I'm coming into a convex curve again, and so I'm going to be carefully turning it under where I snipped the fabric, but my stitching should be done in a spot where I don't have anything. And I'm taking the needle and I'm using my needle there to kind of swipe across the entire curve so that I can get it consistent. When I need to, I go to the back, I secure my thread so that I can get ready to start again. So you can see that it's coming along. I'm about halfway through my shape. I need to thread my needle once again. And while I am threading my needle, I'm getting ready to go to do my quilter's knot again. So once again, I take my needle and kind of swipe it across all that fabric, and then I go back to the back of my fabric and come up and continue stitching. Again, I'm holding it with my right hand. If you're right-handed, you would be holding with your left hand and stitching with your right hand. Again, because I'm left-handed, I started on the left side of my shape. As a right-handed sewist, you would start on the right hand side of your shape and stitch that way. I'm going to just keep carefully turning my raw end underneath. It's going up and it's meeting underneath. It's meeting that basted line that I did. And having a consistent seam allowance and curve on that helps my fabric to stay in place. So I'm going to continue this process as I continue around the second shape, or the second petal on this flower petal piece. And I'm going to keep going until I get through all of them. Applique is a really amazing skill that can be learned. I like using thread basting on these pieces when I am dealing with a lot more bulk. If I do my basting with starch and then just pin these down with, you can see, as much handling as I'm doing of the fabric, it can be really easy without me realizing it to have my shape shift and then end up with some folds or puckers or kind of funny little bubbles in it. And so something I really like doing is when I am stitching a piece to a much larger piece of fabric, I feel like thread basting is a really, really good thing to do. And again, it's because it holds it in place. I can manhandle that fabric as much as I need to, and it is not going to move because I stitched it down along every edge. So you can see now I'm in my second of the deep convex curves. I accidentally just pulled my needle right off the thread, but I'm just going to rethread it, go right down under, and then sometimes if I do that, that's a sign to me that it's ready for me to start a new piece of thread. Maybe I'm letting my thread get too short. So I definitely let it get too short here because I have to rethread it for a second time. So that means it is time for me to just pull it through and knot it and get another piece. Again, when you cut your thread, you only want to cut it about somewhere between 12 and 18 inches. A good general guide is about the distance from the palm of your hand to your elbow. If you keep your thread about that length when you start, you should have a lot less trouble with it knotting. But when you try to be efficient and get much longer pieces of thread, they frequently end up knotting as you pull it through. Another thing to do as you go is to not be in too big of a rush as you're pulling your thread through the fabric, but to just go slow and steady and give the thread a chance to just smoothly glide through your fabric instead of going so quickly that it can get tangled up and knotted. I'm going around my final curve of the piece here, and again where I need to, both around the concave and the convex curves, I can stitch a little closer together if needed to hold things in place, and I'm going to stitch all the way to the end. But again, on this particular piece, I am not going to finish by stitching under the flat end of my flower there. The reason for that is I'm going to be putting another piece on top of it, so I don't need the extra bulk of a seam underneath it. Also, it will allow me to place my stem perfectly. So I'm going to fold this right up, and then I'm going to stitch it, and I'm going to finish it up is what I mean, and knot it. And so now I have it all ready to go. Something fun to do now is I'm going to snip in the valleys of the two convex curves, and now I'm just going to grab the thread and I'm going to pull it out. So now all of my threads are gone and it's fully finished. You can see with my needle, I'm kind of tucking my stem fabric right up in that hole so they're easy to connect. I'm going to pin. I want a little bit of a curve and I don't want it to go too long, so I'm going to trim it off. There will be another piece over that spot where I'm tucking it in, so that will be hidden. So this time I'm going to match with a dark green thread, do the same thing with my needle. I'm using the same kind of knot. It's called a quilter's knot. I'm going to come up from the back, and I am starting on this right side here, so I can just continue the line I had before. If I was right-handed, I would have started on the other end, basically right where you just left off at the end of your blue shape. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to remove my pins as I go, and I'm stitching that down. When I reach the point on my bias tape that I'm at the end, I don't want to leave a raw end there. So I'm going to stitch to just about 1/4 of an inch away from the end. And then I'm going to fold it under 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to carefully stitch again, giving a few extra stitches around there. And when I get to the other side, you can see I've got a few threads that kind of want to poke out. So I'm going to use my needle several times to tuck it down in, and then I'm going to stitch it and secure that so that I have a nice finished end on this stem. And I will continue back up the second side of my stem until I get to the point where it has been inserted underneath the blue fabric. When I reach that point, I will put my needle down, and I'll pull my thread through to the back, and I will knot my thread like I have on all of my other pieces. The last thing I need to do to finish this shape is to add what is called the receptacle of the flower. And that is the little piece there that covers it all up. And so you can see that when we're doing flowers or other things that have multiple pieces, we're going to build from the back to the front, from the bottom to the top. So I have a lighter green thread this time, and I pinned this in place, and I'm going to just stitch all the way around so that I can complete my flower. As I stitch along, I'm getting especially to the little edges, and then I'm just removing the pin, and I'm going to go all the way around. I'm kind of coming down on my final side there, and I'm going to secure it in every spot until I come back all the way around in a circle, pull my thread through, knot it at the back, cut it off, and then now I've completed my flower. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to get more content, and I hope you'll enjoy checking out other videos I have on my channel teaching other skills, and specifically that you will enjoy all the videos in this series. Applique is a lot of fun and a wonderful skill to have. Enjoy practicing it yourself.